All right, what is up? Welcome in another episode of GC Live bi-week edition here. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, as always, brought to you by our guy, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com. You see it right above our heads every single day right there, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797. His NMLS number is 71597. As we always tell you, if you're in the market for a new home or you've been renting and maybe you've been thinking about making that jump to home ownership. Maybe it just sounds a little bit daunting to you. Maybe you've heard about interest rates and cost to buy these days, and you just want to know, what does it look like for me? Hit up Clint. He's going to sit down, walk you through your entire financial picture, first of all, and then come up with a plan for you and a plan for home ownership. Let you know how much can you afford, how much do you want to afford to make sure you're not home poor, and just go through all the little intricacies of that process. Again, hit up Clint today. I did when me and my wife moved into this home, helped us out every step of the way. He can do the exact same for you at 803-422-6797.
Let's also tell you about our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet. You've been hearing about them here on the show for a while. If you're on Gamecock Central on the Insiders Forum, you've seen them there too. FerryChevrolet.com. That's Fairey, Chevrolet.com. You can also give them a call, 803-937-4531. If you're a Gamecock fan out there who's considering a new or used vehicle, if you're just investigating it, if you're ready to buy, check out their inventory online at FerryChevrolet.com, or it's worth a trip to go over to Orangeburg to see them, conveniently located right in between Columbia and Charleston off of I-26. They are a family-owned business that's been around and serving the community since 1926. Business started in St. Matthews, and again is located currently in Orangeburg, led by a fourth-generation dealer in Joseph Ferry. And honesty, integrity, and a handshake, that's how they operate. Wes, not always a great experience when you're looking to buy a car. You're going to have a great experience with the folks over at Ferry Chevrolet. That's FerryChevrolet.com, or 803-937-4531.
Certainly appreciate both of those great sponsors, and appreciate everybody who is already into the chat today joining us, as Brandon said, on a stress-free weekend for South Carolina. Jeff says drop the Miami games, play Akron. As fun as playing Miami would be, as good of an idea as that sounds like for a made-for-TV game, I'm kind of with you, Jeff, when you look at the fact that, me personally, I wasn't really so sure the SEC should go to 9 games anyway, but I knew that was coming because money. Like that's if money is the factor and you feel like, oh, we can make more money with 9 than we can make with 8, that was always ultimately going to be the answer. By the way, Chris, how does Missouri have 8 home games this year? You have any idea?
It seems like they get a pretty good draw every year, but that's a good question. I have no idea. I didn't even realize that.
I think that's right. And is there a rule? Carolina has traditionally, when Clemson is a home game, done something kind of special with that additional game. Like that's when you build in a road game or a neutral site game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went back and looked. That is right. Because their first 3 were non-con games, and they were all at home.
So there's nothing stopping you from doing that.
From an out of conference standpoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because they don't have that typical team that they're playing at, like South Carolina plays Clemson, every year. Georgia plays Georgia Tech, and that's always going to be, a home and home. Carolina Clemson's a home and home. Missouri doesn't have that. They had Central Arkansas, Kansas, and then Louisiana, and then they got into conference play with South Carolina. Then they played their final non-conference game against UMass over the weekend, which was also at home. So they had their 4 non-con games were all at home, basically. So,
which is why Drink will not leave Missouri if Florida opens. You would think.
Yeah, possibly so.
But yeah, if Clemson is home, wouldn't Carolina make more revenue if they just did an additional home game those years? We had no plans to talk about this. It would just was on my mind.
Do we have plans? I don't know. Maybe you had some plans. I didn't have plans for anything. It's the bye week. It's a grab bag today.
Yeah. Or do you make great money off the neutral sites? I don't know. That would be something to ask somebody, I think. Let's see. Brandon says no way Miami lets you do that. But isn't the ACC trying to go to 9 games as well? Now, the ACC needs resume building games. You know, so if you're Miami and you have a trip to Columbia baked into your schedule for next year, you, like Brandon probably has a point. You probably want that game remaining on your schedule. If you're South Carolina, you're probably okay with that game just disappearing and pretending it never happened. So we shall see. That is the danger of when these things get scheduled so many years ahead of time, man. Like, you just do not know what you're going to get moving forward.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, and there's been nothing publicly said about this except for the fact, like specifically with the Miami game. Shane Beamer has made his thoughts very public in the past that he feels like, look, if we're the SEC and we're going to 9 games, you know, probably every conference should play 9 games. That'd be his like ideal world. It's obviously up to the conferences to decide what they want to do, but conferences, if they see more money in it and they see more benefit, that's ultimately why they're going to do it, right? So I think Beamer's point is a good one in that not only are they going to be playing 9 games, they're going to be playing 9 games in either the premier college football conference in the country or 1A and 1B, or at worst 2. You know, there might be some Big Ten people out there. The Big Ten's the best. Fine. The SEC, there could be nobody out there that thinks that the ACC is a stronger football league than the SEC right now. I mean, the argument just can't be made. At the Power 4 level, the SEC is at the top, or they're 1A, 1B with the Big Ten. Then you add 9 games. And then for South Carolina, as a specific case, Wes, you've got the fact that you're going to play Clemson every year, which, by the way, has been one of the most consistent programs in the entire country. And no, they haven't won a title in a while, but they've won ACC championships, 8 of the last 10 years. They've been the best team in that conference many of those years. They've been in the playoff even when they haven't won. They've been a very, very good program, and that's another Power 4 game that you're going to have to play. So for the future, does this alter South Carolina's scheduling strategy? I don't think there's any doubt about that. What it may mean for some of these games that are coming up in the very near future, we'll see. I mean, I would personally not be surprised to see South Carolina try to pull back, but there's a lot there. You know, there's contracts, there's financial, I don't know if penalties is the right word, but there's financial payments that would need to be made to get out of some of these games. But I think thinking long term, I think there's a really good chance that South Carolina peels back and says, okay, hey, we're good playing our 9 SEC games, playing Clemson every year, and then let's try to go a little bit lighter as far as we can on the other ones.
Yeah, 9-game conference schedule sounds great if you say, hey, every conference is going to play 9 conference games, but 9 in the ACC, not really equal to 9, frankly, in any of the other conferences, I would say at this point. You know, and I still think the SEC slate, like if you're going to say who can put forth the most difficult 9-game schedule, and this can be cyclical, I think still right now, the answer is still the SEC. Now, if you told me where do the best teams in the country lie right now, like the elite of the elite, I maybe give the Big Ten maybe the edge there. Like I think there's more competitive depth in the SEC than anywhere, and probably more competitive depth than the league has ever had. Football has always been good, but it almost reminds me a little bit of how the SEC is in baseball and like softball these days, in terms of just like every single team is a potential top 25 team. And, you know, I don't know what that means for scheduling moving forward, what it means for how much respect you get. You know, if you go 9-3, the way things are right now, man, it's kind of like the NFL. Nobody goes undefeated in the NFL. One team ever has done it. You're not going undefeated in the SEC anymore. If you're an SEC team, you're not going undefeated, period. So it kind of just resets the way you have to look at a final record and kind of how you frame up a successful season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, now, Wes, it's funny because we're not sitting here having a conversation about, we've tried to have the conversation, who is the best team right now? And like, you're going to come up with different ideas, but we're not in the age of college football, particularly in the playoff era. There have been, we've been doing this a while, 15, 16 years. And there have been some years that you could point to in college football where you go, that is the best team. And normally that team that you identify would end up winning the thing. They would be one of the two teams that got selected to go play in the national championship game and would end up winning. And there are a few exceptions, of course, but generally you could identify the best team or, hey, it's really between these 2 to 4 teams. Now in 2025, I mean, it's incredibly hard, to figure out exactly what that may be, particularly with an expanded playoff. It gives you a lot more leeway as a team to where now you're sitting there going through a schedule, figuring out, hey, can you go, if you're an SEC team, can you go 10-2? Because if you do that, you're in. It gives you a little bit more wiggle room. And frankly, it's wiggle room that you need now because it's going to be very, very difficult to go through an entire season, as you said, unscathed and week to week. So hard to tell. I mean, we brought up this example in the past, but how many people, including at least partially myself, kind of write off Alabama? Man, they look terrible. And they did, right? They got beat, and then they got beat in a certain way where you're going through looking at the tape and counting loafs and seeing how their team looks. And, okay, Nick Saban isn't walking through that door. And then the next few weeks, they're dominant. They're dominant the next 2 games. They win 73-0 over ULM. They destroy Wisconsin, not a great team, right? But they beat Wisconsin, beat the brakes off of them. And then they go beat Georgia at Georgia. Now that conversation has completely shifted. And if they go lose to Vandy this weekend, it'll shift again. But I think it just illustrates the week-to-week nature. There's a lot more parity in the sport now, which is fun. But it also, man, it makes it just hard to predict what you're going to get. You can't really anoint a team based on a 1-week result, and you can't, totally dismiss a team based on 1-week result either.
Yeah. Is anybody in the SEC favored over Ohio State or Oregon right now?
Probably not. Probably not.
I don't think if you line them up on a neutral site game, certainly not Ohio State. I think even with a new quarterback, I think until you beat them, I think to me Alabama may be the best team in the SEC right now, and at least and that's some recency bias, but
sure.
Then you look at it and you say, well, they have a loss to Florida State, who has a loss to Virginia. So, I mean.
And we're sitting here we're having the conversation of, could Vandy beat Alabama again? And it's an open question. It's not, would it be surprising to some people or mildly shocking if Vanderbilt goes and win? I mean, yeah, maybe. But would it be this cataclysmic thing that's completely insane to even think of? No, not this year. It really wouldn't. Ole Miss, man, Ole Miss getting playoff love for good reason. They've had a couple of absolute squeakers in the conference against probably the 2 worst teams, right? They beat Kentucky. They beat Kentucky and Arkansas by 1 score each? And they're really good. Ole Miss is, we think. I think they're a really good team in all phases. They've got brilliant play caller. They've got really good, defense, but they had struggles. They barely won those 2 games. And maybe they run the table. Who knows? But again, just so much parity in this conference right now.
Yeah. I mean, they've been in tight games. It was a tight game with LSU. I mean, I thought they outplayed LSU, but it ended up being a tight game. They lost all that talent to the NFL that they had to replace this offseason. So, Have they really been tested yet? I don't think we know that yet. Here's my question. Is LSU, with Nussmeier playing the way he is right now, let's flip this forward and try to make it somewhat South Carolina relevant. Is LSU all that good? Like, we're giving them credit for opening the year, beating Clemson at Clemson in Death Valley. You go make some plays late to win that game, and then we realize, well, maybe Clemson's not that great right now.
Yeah.
No, I do think I think it's funny, man. There's some like mental aspects though to that's still a good win for LSU. Like almost the fact that you didn't know yet that Clemson wasn't very good. So you were treating them like, hey, if we're LSU, man, we've lost our opener in these neutral site or road games the last few years. And like that was a mental hurdle they had to clear. Thinking you just beat a contender, to thinking you just beat like a top 5 type team. You lose to Ole Miss, though, if you're LSU. Nussmeier looks off. Now, they very quickly could get right if Nussmeier gets right. But like I am not convinced right now as we sit here that LSU, I mean, what was their out of conference game that they just squeaked by to 23-7 Louisiana Tech, 20-10 against a Florida team that's possibly about to fire their coach. So I mean, I don't really know that. Like this is going to be a tough game, right? Like let's go ahead and look ahead. You don't go to Baton Rouge and just win by playing poorly. But I'm really not convinced this game, and we're going to dive into it more next week, of course. I'm really not convinced that this LSU game is quite the daunting task that it appears to be on paper, and certainly not the one it appeared to be as you were watching South Carolina get beat by Vandy, get beat by Missouri, not look great against SC State. If there's a game in this stretch that I'm going, it's not quite as hard as it looks on paper, this may be the one.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny how these games kind of change, right, throughout the course of the year. I mean, before the season, even though it was at home, you probably had the Clemson game a lot higher in terms of order of difficulty. Now it's a lot lower, right? Like it's every conference game is above it, probably only Coastal below it. But then Clemson, West, you got to keep in the back of your mind, you're like, they're still a really talented team. Like, couldn't they turn it around? In theory, they could. They have not had a very good start at all, obviously going 1-3, and in some ways being pretty fortunate to not be 0-4 right now. Dabo is talking about, well, if we just took over the turnovers, we're probably 4-0, right? Well, if you took away some things that happened in the Troy game, you could very easily be 0-4 as well. It could be a little bit worse. So, yeah, I think this LSU game has shifted a little bit. I do think West Tiger Stadium, I mean, coming into this year, LSU was 147-25 at home since the 2000 season. You're playing them at night. Again, we'll get into this game a lot more, but that makes it tough. Like any SEC game on the road, it's going to be more difficult. The fact that it's at night, I've seen a night game at LSU, the 2012 South Carolina LSU game. It's pretty crazy, right? But are they a little off? Are they not quite what we thought they were in some ways? Yes, I think so, particularly on offense. They're definitely, I think, much improved defensively from the team we saw last year. But offensively, with Nussmeier not being 100%, not running the ball well, having a lot of turnover, losing, I think, 4 or 5 starting offensive linemen from what was a really, really good O-line last year. Those things have affected them, and they could flip a switch, like you said earlier, and get this thing turned around and play a lot better down the stretch. They're still in a good position overall. They just have the one conference loss, but it looks more winnable than it was. Still an extremely tall order for South Carolina, but maybe it's, gone down a little bit in that pecking order.
Yeah, Matt makes a good point. The Florida game was close. That's even with DJ Lagway having 5 interceptions in that game.
Yeah.
And is there something fundamentally wrong? Much like South Carolina at times, like LSU has not been able to run the football as good as their O-line was last year. They had struggles running the football. Like, remember that group was great at passing, great at protecting the passer, great in pass pro. We're not a great running football team and did not, Nussmeier can extend plays for you. He can take off running from time to time, but they did not have the aspect of Sellers to kind of, hey, if the traditional run game is not there, you have a guy who can go get you some yards on the ground. You also have a guy who's going to make defenses pay every single time they get too greedy with calling man coverage, in the secondary. So I think that's a factor here. Nussmeier, in addition to the mechanics looking different so far this year because of the injury, I didn't feel like he looked to run at all against Ole Miss. And I always kind of thought that was a little bit of an underrated part of his game. Not that he was not a run first, second, or third guy, but he could extend a play when he needed to. He could take off when he needed to. Maybe there just wasn't room there. There were a couple times in that game, though, I felt like there was some room, and he did not really seem to want to take off running at all.
He didn't. He's a crafty runner. We saw that a little bit in the South Carolina game, and I think maybe even affected his pocket presence a little bit. That's one of the things. He can buy himself some when he's healthy, fully healthy. He can buy himself some time. He can scramble for you a little bit, pick up a first down, get some extra yardage for you, but also just him navigating the pocket, being able to throw from different arm angles, being able to throw kind of off platform. That's his game. And he's super tough. I mean, he's been playing through whatever he has already. Saw last year, South Carolina, he gets absolutely beat up at the beginning of that game and just, stays the course and comes back. And yeah, there were a lot of horrible calls in that game from an officiating standpoint, obviously, but there are a lot of plays that LSU just made in that game too that South Carolina didn't make down the stretch. And that's what, I'm sure Shane Beamer will talk about that next week leading up to the game. I'm sure he'll be asked a little bit about last year's game. And I think his message is going to be, hey, we have to not leave it up to chance or leave it up to anybody else but us. We've heard him say that, a whole bunch after that game last year too.
Brandon, I think it was Brandon, asked earlier, where'd he go? Did the staff do anything different with Dylan Stewart last weekend to help him wreak havoc? Or was Kentucky's O-line really that bad? Brandon, I think a lot of it is game flow, man. A lot of it is like we talked about, hey, Vandy got their exact game they wanted against South Carolina. Missouri got their exact game they wanted against South Carolina. Kentucky, for about a drive and a half, appeared to get the game they wanted from South Carolina. And then that completely turned. And, I think it's easy to sit there and be like, well, Dylan has been this, Dylan has been that. But you have to get in passing situations to be able to go rush the passer. And Dylan is a freakazoid off the edge. Like he can get into the backfield, honestly, at just about any point he wants to. Now, when you're having to play the run and, you have gap integrity and, they're trying to run right at you. They're trying to run away from you. They're trying to leave you in blocks so they can read you. They're double teaming you. They're doing all these different things to try to kind of take you out of the game. It's just really hard to make an impact. And then if you only get in 2 or 3 third or longs in an entire game, you're putting a lot of pressure on those couple of opportunities to go get the quarterback. And now I do think Kentucky, we've seen this. Their O-line over the years typically has been built to run the football. They're not necessarily built to have the drop back throw game. And so I think that's a pretty big factor here. Even early on, they were trying to throw the ball on some early downs. I think trying to not get to those third and longs, they were trying to, all right, let's get him some easy throws on first down, second down, maybe power the ball down the field a little bit. And South Carolina's edge guys really did not seem to be, even though Kentucky was running the ball fairly well early, they did not seem too concerned about the run. Like they sort of said, we're going to go get this quarterback regardless. Now there were, Chris, I thought there were some really, really nice designs from Clayton. Nothing like you've never seen before, but just well-timed stunts. The big hit from Dylan to cause the first fumble that JT Gear picks up. That's a stunt. Kentucky just didn't pick it up correctly, and then you get him somewhat free, and you're going to have a car wreck in the backfield. And that was the case. So, yeah, I think Dylan played well. I do think he played a little bit better maybe than he has, but at the same time, there's a lot of situational things that allow you to do that, whereas situationally, the last two opponents before Kentucky got the exact style of game they wanted.
Yeah, you have to earn the right to be able to rush the passer. And obviously, the first drive, South Carolina was not able to do that. And Kentucky scored on their second drive, too, although they did hold them to a field goal. As time went on, as the game went on, South Carolina got up. They created some defensive scores, that play that you mentioned from Dylan, and took Kentucky out of their game plan to where they were able to tee off. Another one, Wes, I mean, there was another stunt where Desmond Umeozulu was lined up inside, came around, beat the left tackle, and then put that big hit on that ended up being another Kentucky turnover where the ball was thrown deep downfield and Brandon Cisse picked it off. So I agree. It was a lot of game flow and style stuff. I do think Dylan played hard. He played well in the game, but it was a combination, I think, of all those factors. It wasn't just one thing of Kentucky's left tackle. Really, Dylan lines up on the right a lot as well. So was it a combination of their offensive line was not the strongest South Carolina will see? Yeah, there's some of that. Is it he had a really good game? Yeah. But it was also, I think, scheme, game flow, and all those things that led into that performance.
Yeah, and definitely just made a lot of plays out there. The play at the end of the half, too, where they're trying to lateral the ball around, and Dylan gets a free shot at a ball carrier who is not moving, was, I don't know, maybe one of the crazier plays I've seen. Just crazy. But, and Dylan, you're going to have to get that game wrecking out of him the rest of the way, man. I do think on an individual basis, like, you've got some pretty good play from the guys up front. It's just a matter of putting it all together, I think, against the better rushing teams. Will Helms had a really good analytical breakdown, on Gamecock Central. I guess that came out yesterday. A lot of their issues stopping the run, a lot of their issues overall, just in terms of that type of stuff, has been missed tackles, but a lot of that has been against like your Ahmad Hardy types. Like at least his numbers, his analytics and stuff he follows tells the story, which again, I don't think analytics are everything, but they tell the story that, a lot of that has been a little bit matchup based. Like South Carolina has been in position in the run game. Their run defense score, like grade on PFF as a whole, is very high, very, very high. They've been in position to get off the field at times, but some key missed tackles have hurt them. There's not necessarily, you're going to face some good backs the rest of the way, man. Not necessarily like a bunch of Ahmad Hardys, left to, or even, I would say not even Seth McGowan's. Like, I think that guy's kind of a stud too. So, we'll see what that looks like. Again, LSU, not a great run team at all on offense. So how does that kind of square up with a South Carolina run defense that at times has been good, at other times has not? Vandy gashed you in the second half of that game. They actually played the run very well in the first half against Vandy. So I don't know. I don't even know where we're going with that, but let's momentarily tell you about a couple of sponsors. But Chris, what's been your biggest surprise through 5 games? We're not quite at the halfway point we are approaching it very quickly. And we do have enough data to know a lot of this is not just a fluke at this point. Like, there's enough data to know, hey, here are some positives. Here are some weaknesses. Here are some things that they're going to absolutely have to have had some form of correction during the bye week.
I think my biggest one is the offense, and to a degree, they got back on more solid footing against Kentucky. It wasn't, of course, an explosive performance on offense. A couple of their opportunities, frankly, were taken away, which is a good thing. You always love scoring on defense if you can, but the defense scored more than once. But the offense was a lot better in some of the areas that they've really struggled in, which is going backwards, procedural penalties, too many sacks. Those were not eliminated altogether, but they were much improved on against Kentucky. And we'll have to see, obviously, in order to have success, they're going to have to not only carry that over, but build on it, Wes. But that would actually be my biggest surprise, is how much conversation we were having through the first 4 games of the season about South Carolina's lack of a run game, about South Carolina having so many negative plays, about all the procedural issues. Because remember, we've been covering this team a while. We get to see some practices, not as much as we got to see like in the Spurrier era. It's where we are in college football now, but we pay close attention and talk to a lot of people in spring ball and in preseason camp. And the vibes were pretty good about this South Carolina offense going into the season. It had a different feel. A lot of times in years past, we would hear about some of the offense having some struggles in preseason, and then those would carry over to the field. And so from that standpoint, maybe it wasn't a huge surprise. This year, a lot of the feedback that we got was more positive about the offense in terms of moving the ball, even the run game, looking better from an efficiency standpoint. And then boom, the season hits and you're not seeing those things. Now, even if you put the context in there of Lenore Sellers missing over half the game against Vandy, with him, I don't think being quite himself against Missouri, there's still a lot in there to be concerned about from an O-line standpoint, blocking on the perimeter, blocking in the box, going backwards, procedural stuff. I was surprised about how much of that ended up happening in the early part of the season. And the jury's out as to whether or not the Kentucky game was kind of a catharsis and South Carolina kind of is going to be able to turn that around. But it was certainly a theme in the first 4 games. The run game thing is still very much in play. That has to get a lot better too. But that was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue with that, man. Can you get a little bit better in the run game? Like, forget even just like completely turning it around. Can you get incrementally better there? I really like some of what we've seen from Sellers in the pass game in terms of just overall standing in there, getting to that second or third read. I thought he was incredibly decisive this past week in terms of when to take off and run. You love the emergence of Vandrevius Jacobs at that position at receiver. Brian Rowe coming along. I still think, Nick Harbor's going to catch a lot of balls for you. Just his presence is something that helps you. And then I think Donovan Murph still, as the season progresses, is going to have a shot to play a big role on this receiving corps. It's been – and some of it is, for whatever reason, you were not able to stay on the field enough those first couple of games to really get the receivers going. I think we have gradually started to see what these receivers can do, and it's a little bit more maybe along the lines of what we expected just overall from this receiving corps coming into the year. The running backs just have not had much room to operate, and I think these are backs that do need a little bit of space. Every running back has a little bit different skill set, right? I think there's a reason why we're seeing Matt Fuller, and it's that he is, to an extent, a pile mover. Now, I think I think Matt missed some holes on Saturday too. So can you bring him along? Can you continue to bring him along? You're going to have to run Sellers, right? However you want to phrase it, when they're talking about we have not told Sellers not to run, defenses giving you zone looks instead of man like last year. Kentucky zoned you up, and Sellers was still able to run with success. So you're just going to have to run 16 if you're going to keep this thing going and have any kind of momentum from what we saw against what is not your typical great Kentucky defense. So I don't know, man. It has been a little bit just different than we expected. If I would have told you one of my top 3 biggest concerns coming into the season would have been, hey, if this team is who we think they are and the schedule is what we think it is, you're going to have some games coming down to a field goal. And that position's a huge question mark. Now, you haven't had any game winners attempted yet, but William Joyce is sitting there 4 for 5. Vakari Swain has returned 3 punts for touchdowns. Your kickoff return unit has actually – now they've had a couple little, hey, we shot ourselves in the foot moments, but they're going to bust a long one, I think, before the year is over because they've been close several times. I mean, Joe D was pretty like prophetic in saying that we're going to get this, and that from these special teams, and we're going to be better in the return game. Lo and behold, they absolutely have been. Defense has been a couple of steps, I think, better, quicker than we thought they would be. Like I didn't want to put a ceiling on these guys, man. Like I didn't want to say, hey, what they are in game 1 is going to be what they are in game 7. Like I thought there might be a little kind of ease in time. Defense, I think, has probably been better than we necessarily thought they would be on paper, with the caveat that they are going to be tested even more in some of these games moving forward. So let's see what they are then. Let's see what that looks like. But it's certain. I mean, I'll admit it, man. I thought you were looking Garnet glasses at 5-0, realistically at 4-1 at this point in the year. You've already just eaten up your buffer, essentially.
Yep. You've eaten up your margin. And, to go back to the point we were talking about earlier, the bigger point of how unpredictable the SEC is, you can't, especially, and we've learned this with Beamer teams, I think it applies right now. You can't just say, well, they couldn't beat Vandy and Missouri. How are they going to go beat Texas A&M or Ole Miss? And that is a valid point. But at the same time, I don't think we've seen this team. We haven't seen close to this team's best ball this year. And a lot of it has been stuff that's correctable or self-inflicted to where you're wondering, man, if they can turn that around, what is the ceiling of this South Carolina team? They also have one of the most dynamic offensive players in the team who plays in the country, who plays the most important position on the field at quarterback at Lenora Sellers. Wes, I thought he had against Kentucky basically a vintage Sellers game where he just made so much happen for you. When he's playing like that, it's really, really hard to beat South Carolina. And he didn't play half the game against Vanderbilt. You may have a negative view or a pessimistic view and say, they wouldn't have won that game anyway. Maybe not. But I think we can all agree there's a difference when he's on the field versus when he's not. Missouri, bad as you played, fourth quarter game. Now it still goes down as a loss. Both of those do. And to your point, that means you've eaten up that buffer to now where you go into the toughest part of your schedule, this 5-game stretch. You don't really have any margin for error if you're going to do something really big. Can you still have a good season? Yeah, for sure. But now instead of your buffer games being, all right, in this 5-game stretch, you probably got to build in, even for a really, really good team, Wes. In that 5-game stretch, you probably got to build in like a couple losses. Mm-hmm. If Alabama plays that stretch, you're probably going, you got to build in a couple losses. Or Georgia, right? And both of those teams have already lost a game this year. Instead, it got flipped on its head, and 2 of your more winnable, quote-unquote, games are already losses. So it's tough. But I do think, look, all in all, South Carolina's best performance, despite there were a lot of warts in it, particularly in the run game offensively, still their best performance of the season, I think, in all phases against Kentucky, a more complete performance. Can they build on that during the bye week and be better going forward? We'll see.
Yeah, there's going to be a couple of losses in there, man. I think the question at this point is, well, can you build in a couple of wins as well? Like, is this going to be kind of a 50-50 thing where you go, hey, they were in all these ball games and they won a couple and they lost a couple and maybe you get a break here or there? Or is it going to be, you're just struggling to find a W in kind of that 5-game stretch, and then that really just is going to make it hard to have a super successful season at that point. I don't know. We'll see, man. I tell you what, dude, let's go ahead. Let me pull this up and tell folks about Chris, one of our newest sponsors. We mentioned them last week, but we are pumped up about our friends at Brunt Workwear, who are our newest sponsor here on the show. Chris, you want to show off the brand new boots you got, man? Here, let's get that. Let's get that graphic off your head as we. Okay, there we go. Can't hear you, Chris. The brand new Brunt Workwear boots there. Have you tried these bad boys on yet, man?
Yeah, man, these things are sweet. They're like rugged, right? Like they're a hoss of a boot, but they're also really comfortable. That's the thing. Like, and you can wear these like anywhere. You could wear these to church. You could wear them night out on the town. Go hiking. You want to do some hiking? I imagine you could do that. And I have not, full disclosure, I've not hiked in these yet, but I may this weekend. So we'll see. But yeah, these things are very, very well made. They're really nice.
I think if you wanted to go out to dinner and like wear them with like a little bit dressier outfit.
Yeah, night out on the town. Yeah, absolutely.
They would work for that as well. Hey, fellow short guy here, man, I like them. They give you a little boost too, to be honest with you. Like a little bit. Get a little pop, a little extra there. So
they do.
Hey, if hold, you got them, can you hold it up again, Chris? If you want this pair or many of their other options, we got a deal for you. The great thing about our sponsors on this show is we want for it to be an advantage to you as well. Head on over to bruntworkwear.com/GC or just go to bruntworkwear.com and then make sure you put in the code GC there at the end, and you're going to get $10 off your first order from our friends at Brunt, who really just want you to have that awesome work boot, but that is super comfortable. And Chris, super comfortable right off, like right the second you pull it out of the box as well. It's one of those boots that you don't have to break in. A lot of, especially new boots, you have to like break it in over time. Not the case here with Brunt Workwear. So shout out to them again for being a awesome sponsor here on GC Live, and excited to have them among our family of sponsors, Chris.
Yep, let's tell them about another member of the family. That's Brandon Cohen and Palmetto Golf and Belts. PalmettoGolfing.com is where you can go. Another great online shop. If you're a golfer, you're definitely going to want to check it out. They have custom golf gloves, towels, and tees, plus custom needlepoint belts. They're all available in a variety of colors. The cross design, the palmetto tree and moon. They've got the South Carolina garnet, blue, other colors in the catalog too. PalmettoGolfing.com or Palmetto Golf and Belts. If you are not a golfer, I know you know someone who is. So for that golfer in your life, you can definitely find a great gift. Plus, needlepoint belts, those are for everybody. You can wear them that night out on the town, Wes, wear them to church, wear them to work. Super well made, a lot more affordable than other options that you can find online or in stores. Go support big South Carolina fan, Gamecock Central member Brandon Cohen, his online shop, PalmettoGolfing.com. Palmetto Golf and Belts. Go check them out.
So you could get your Brunt Workwear boots, and then you could get your Palmetto Golf and Belts. And, I mean, you're set.
Pair perfectly, actually.
Pair them together.
Yeah.
There you go, man. Let's close this thing out before we get into the bye weekend. Hope everybody enjoys their just non-bye stress watching of football. What game are you looking forward to the most, man?
Oh man, I knew you were going to ask me that. Yeah, it is going to be nice just to sit and watch some football and like that's it, right? Like just be able to watch. Let me go through the list here. I have one I've got to mention, and not because it's a top 25 matchup at all at this point, which is kind of funny to say. Clemson, North Carolina. Whew, not what the TV networks were envisioning. Probably to begin the season, they thought it was going to be probably undefeated or close to undefeated Clemson squad against Bill Belichick, Swinney versus Belichick. Instead, you've got UNC, their first conference game. They're 2-2. Clemson's sitting there at 1-3. But I'm fascinated just to see that game. Like, can Clemson turn it around at all? North Carolina, not a very good team. So if Clemson doesn't get it done, things will heat up there. But I think they will. But I'm fascinated to watch that one just to see. I am looking forward to Vandy Bama. Diego Pavia, he's talking again. Has reason to from last year. Thomas Castellanos from Florida State talked a whole lot going into the Bama game. He backed it up. Bama looks like a completely different team from week one when they lost to Florida State. But I'm nonetheless intrigued by that one. I know you said one, but I'm throwing out a few. And I am very interested, of course, in the Florida State-Miami game. You know, Florida State 3-1, did beat Bama, already dropped an ACC game. Miami opening conference play, their first conference game, top 3 team. That one's fascinating too to me.
I think that's my most interesting game this weekend. Now, if Vandy is for real and they're going to the fourth quarter of this one, and the talk is how Vandy has controlled the flow of this game again, Pavia has been Pavia. His Houdini plays have gone his way as opposed to turning into some pick six or scoop and score the other way, then that one quickly surpasses Florida State Miami for me. We'll see. Vandy has the advantage of not coming off of a really just tough-nosed, high drama, high energy, physical rivalry type football game. You know, Alabama getting a big win over Georgia, being told how great they are all this week. Now, you do have the Vandy revenge factor, like the Alabama revenge factor towards Vandy. So it's not like Vandy's going to maybe sneak up on you, but you do have some kind of weird dynamics in this game that could could affect how it plays out. And looking at Florida State and Miami as well, one of our guys on the Insiders Forum, if you're not a subscriber, by the way, one of the best parts about Gamecock Central is being able to interact with all the other South Carolina fans on the Insiders Forum. One of our guys on there, Luedecke, will put out a lot of his different picks and predictions and stuff like that. A lot of them against the spread. But a trend last week was looking at road favorites in their first true road games for the season. Those teams went 2-7 against the spread, and you had outright losses. I have not checked behind this. It's all according to Riley. Outright losses by Arizona, Central Florida, and Florida State. What does that little trend, what does that little reminder mean for Miami and Florida State? Everybody's going to remember FSU coming off of a loss at Virginia. But this Miami team having to go into Doak Campbell. This is, I believe, their first true road test of the year. People are going to write off FSU. That is still a very talented FSU team. You have a dynamic quarterback who's going to give you some things in the run game. You have Gus Malzahn drawing things up. And I got Miami heavily on upset alert. I picked FSU in our pick 'em this week.
Okay. Very interesting.
Mainly entirely on outward dynamics, and that I think they're two good teams. FSU coming off of a loss, Miami going to their place, and Miami having the luxury of being home so far.
Yes. I think that's a good point. So you got FSU. You took Bama in the Vandy game, right? I think all of us took Bama. Wouldn't mind seeing a Vandy win. Hey, in a Vandy win, I think you made this point earlier on the radio show, that kind of further validates that South Carolina, it sounds weird, validates the South Carolina loss, but it lends credence to the idea that Vandy's for real, you know? And they've got a tough road, as does almost everyone in this conference. But there's nobody, like, there's some teams, Wes, that at the end of the year are going to end up being quote unquote bad teams. Kentucky's probably one, right? They're probably the worst team right now. But even the bad teams in the conference for the SEC can give you a good game. You know, just ask Ole Miss about that. Kentucky, Arkansas, they gave Ole Miss really good games. It's gonna be fun though. I'm looking forward to sitting around and watching some college football this weekend.
Yeah, it's not quite last week's slate, you know, to be honest.
No,
trying to pull up the games here real quick. But ultimately, it's not a bad slate either, man, at all. And I feel like when you have maybe a little bit of a quiet week, that's when stuff just hits the fan a lot of times. So there'll probably be an upset in here that nobody's even really having on their radar at all. I mean, what if Florida sitting there dead in the water at 1-3 and 0-1 in the SEC? What if they beat Texas? I mean, Texas is a 6.5-point favorite. That's not some.
I know, that's kind of crazy.
But with what we have seen so far, is Texas really that different than Florida?
And Florida's got a really good. Their defense has been quite good, especially with the lack of offensive output. You know, defensively, Florida's been pretty good. So, you know, you never know. Yeah, we could be due for some chaos.
You have to go to Gainesville. What if Arch just looks completely uncomfortable again? I know he has started to right that ship a little bit, but there's a difference doing what he's done against some of those teams than going on the road again. Like you said, good Florida defense. You got the swamp aspect. Manning's over the years did not always play that great against Florida. So I don't know if there's any carryover whatsoever there. But looking through, you got anything else, man?
Nope.
Good?
Yep.
Who do you have in the battle of Jack Veltri versus former Gamecock Central writer and video guy Mike Uva tonight in the MLB playoffs?
God. I can't root for the Yankees, you know?
So does that mean you're going with the Sox to win too?
Sure. Don't know, but I refuse to pick the Yankees. I do know that. So I'll pick the Sox.
I think the Sox are also in the Yankees' head a little bit. So there's a maybe mental advantage there for the Red Sox. So, all right, y'all. Hey, we're done. We're going to get out of here. Appreciate you hopping on, as always. Come check us out, GamecockCentral.com. We'll break it down every which way you can. And whether you're on YouTube or one of the podcast platforms, make sure you like, review, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on that particular platform. It's very easy to do. It's free to do, and it helps us out in terms of making sure the podcast gets shown to multiple people. So appreciate you hopping on. Everyone, as always, he is Chris. I'm Wes. Y'all have a great bye weekend, and we'll be back to break down South Carolina LSU coming up next Monday. We'll see you then.